Hello again. This video, I'm doing it in order to help you understand how to write memo. Because as you know, one of the tasks that you need to submit with the case study presentation is a memo, and this memo is this it talks about the same case. So you are going to write memo about the case study that you are going to present, and as you know, on the same day of the case study PowerPoint presentation, and before that day you will have to submit two documents, as I mentioned in the previous videos, and this memo is one of them. So I'm going to take you through this memo in order to make sure to get maximum points. As you know, in this course it's around 5 points out of 100, and you don't want to miss this easy task or easy grade. It happened in the previous years. Students don't pay attention to the importance of this document, and they don't actually get high grade in this one. So I hope you follow along here with me to see what we expect from a memo. So maybe if you happen to work in companies before, and there was always some communication documents among different employees, from team members to their supervisors. Usually, supervisor will ask team member to send them a memo if they request something. So memo meant to be like more into a communication tool inside, internally, not outside. So you can think about email. You can send email to internal people, or email to send it to external people. This is to your client, to your suppliers, to anyone. But memo meant only to be an internal document. In the past it was paperwork. It was paper, hard copy, that the department responsible to produce this is to write it and just put it on a bulletin board, or distribute it. But nowadays we are in electronic world, so usually it's being sent as email as well, but it takes the form of memo, and we want to discuss the form of memo today. So this document is already in the same folder, so you can read it. So that's why I'm not going to discuss every single point here, because I'm just taking you through it, but your responsibility is to read it well and to try to understand every point in order to maximize your points. So as I mentioned, what is memo? It's more or less similar to what I mentioned. It's an internal procedures. How the memo written? It's a kind of communication tool or message. It's like email you want to send to someone to recommend to take a certain action. So if you are in a company and you want to buy software for your department, and you ask your supervisor that you want to do this, the supervisor will ask you to write a memo, and in this memo you have to explain why you need this software, how much it costs, and what could be the benefit of this software. Whether you want to buy software, or you buy equipment, or even computer, something like that. Sometimes in memo is you are asked actually to do a homework, like the case of case study, to help decision makers take action. So your homework is to study the case, and to come up with some recommendations. And in the memo, you write this recommendation to propose actions to be taken by decision makers. So you can always think about memo. It should be short, concise, and very effective way of communication. So there are multiple points here. You need to go through them, but I'm just going through the important part that you need to do it. What's the purpose of the memo? As I mentioned before, it could be you want to buy something, you want to recommend action to be taken, you want to promote a certain event. This it depends on the task that you assigned, that was assigned to you. Very important to understand that the purpose is not only important, but beside clearly write the purpose, you need to understand the audience, because audience, the one who is going to receive the memo, to read it and probably take action. So those are the audience, and you need to understand them, and you try it really to uh, develop your memo in a way that to reach if the message that you want to convey to the audience reach very effective and very efficient. So you need to understand what they expect, what they always like to hear, in order to make your point through and actually to get things done. So there should be a purpose, and this purpose, let me go up here, this purpose usually written, you bring attention to a certain problem and solve a certain problem, right? So this is very important. So it's very important to be very clear on the purpose. And so what are the main parts of the memo? It's again important to understand that it has the first segment, we call it the heading segment, and probably you have seen this before sometime, and it looks like an email. It's to who, this is the reader, from, definitely you, and date of the memo, and the subject, so like a header. So it's a basically it's everything you know about email, but in this format. But you can see here the to and the form and date is even written in capital, so you have to respect in many cases the way it's being written. So the written and the reader, I mean, and your name and your job. So you have to be very careful. So the reader names, that means the supervisor or the manager or the CEO maybe, the one who is going to take the action, and the job. So you have to be very formal here. You don't really write any nickname, right? So here your name and your job. What's your job in this context? You have to pretend your job. So you are not a student. You're gonna write your names as student, but your job is the helper for a decision maker. Maybe your role in the case is researcher, or maybe the director of something, maybe the marketing director who writes uh, the the memo to the CEO of the company. So to here will be the CEO name, and the job is the CEO. Here it's your name, exactly the name that you have here in as a student name, and also the job. In this case, your job is the same as your job in the case. It's a role playing, so you need to play the same role. This is the date. Definitely, this date will be the same date as the submission date, and here's the subject, which is based on your case. So one of the very critical points that the second segment is the opening segment. This is actually explaining the header segment or the heading segment the same way as I mentioned. But after you finish the heading segment, then you're gonna write an opening segment. The opening segment, it's a very short. You don't need to write introduction, because if you start to write introduction of the case, the reader will not, you will not get the attention of the reader. So in order to get the attention of the reader, you need to immediately write the purpose of the memo. So you might really say the purpose of this memo is something. You have to be very careful here and very clear and concise, and you have one paragraph. So the opening segment, it could be as short as possible. Even if it's a paragraph with 3-4 sentences maximum, you need to make sure that in this short paragraph you write exactly what is the purpose of the memo and what action you are recommending. So it looks like everything it's here. So this is a very important, because if the reader reads this paragraph, will get immediately alerted, and they will get excited to read the rest of the memo. So don't start with introduction, general introduction, and generic terms, because you lose the reader immediately. The reader is his eyes and the brain is trying to find the purpose. So try to fulfill this point. Uh, Next paragraph, although it started very clear, the context. The context is the circumstance, the background of the problem. Now you have space to write the background of the problem, and also maybe the context, or maybe the conditions, the event itself. So that's a very clear here. So, and also it's short, because the whole memo shouldn't exceed 1 page, and if it exceeds 1 page, to be max 1.5 pages, this is it, because no one is going to read the whole thing. So you need to know how the readers will understand the meaning of the memo. So you need here the context to write your role, exactly what you have done. So you might really write here through market research and analysis. So it's very clear. You go and you jump very quick to the situation that you explain what did you do here, right? So throughout, yeah, you don't even write exactly what you have done, because what you have done in details coming later on in a later segment. But the context, this is the second paragraph. Maybe you can give each paragraph a section or title to make it more organized. It's up to you, but you can always leave it paragraph wise. But it's very recommended to put section. Of course, you will not call it the section context. The context, this is just to explain to you the context of the memo, but in your case, it might really have something related to your case study, like market research, something like that. Or the task segment. Task segment means you might really start with this statement: you asked me, or you asked that I look at something, to study the case, or to study the situation. So it looks like you have been assigned by this reader. This, in this case, your director has assigned to you this task, is to go to study the case in order to help the decision maker take actions. So it's, you have to be very clear here to remind the reader that you told me that, right? You assigned this task to me. So this is what we call it, the task segment. So let me go back here to remind you again, but you need to really go through this document. It's already in the folder. So the heading segment is the usual to, from, date, subject, and then the opening segment, which is the paragraph that will include the purpose in a very concise way. Context is exactly the circumstances, and as well as the events or conditions. The task segment, it's to show that this task was assigned to you, and later on you get to the segment. Yeah, sometimes you might really, if it happened, but it shouldn't happen to your case in this course, but in business, in reality, sometimes this part up here in this the previous task could take really longer than 1 page. So you need to write here what they call it summary segment. Summary segment is just to remind the reader to say, oh, this is the conclusion of the previous segments, so this is the summary segment. Nevertheless, the memo is not yet finished. It's even this is very optional. So this is what does it mean? It means you don't need always to have it, and I would suggest not to have it in this memo in for your case. So you can easily skip this part. I'm not looking at it. So, but after you finish the previous segment, you write the discussion segment. This is where you can write how did you reach your recommendation, because in the above sections and segments you were very brief, you were very concise, to the point. You didn't give too many details. But here in discussion, you're gonna write here how did you reach this, because the reader or the CEO will be interested to understand how did you come to this conclusion. Okay, maybe I like the conclusion as a CEO. I know now what you want to do. I know what you are asking me to do in terms of actions. Now we need to buy this or to sell that. But how did you reach this conclusion? What did you do in terms of studying? Here it's the space where you write your details for how did you reach. So basically you can say this segment is about the how, and above segments is about what. So I hope it's about what and why, right? Then you end by closing segment, where basically you try to make conclusion here. So that's a very important to understand this one. And again, all of them, they will not be more than 1.5 page max. If it's 1 page, it will be even better, but you need to know the format later on. Maybe you might really want to attach some documents, and it could be very necessary attachments. So in this case you can do that. So for instance, you don't want to put text inside the memo or figures inside the memo because it distracts the main message, but you might refer to some findings, like in terms of visualization of data, or maybe in terms of tables, and you don't want to put them, and you shouldn't really put them in the context or in the text itself. So you put it in attachment, and then you write this statement. Attach what? Attach focus group result maybe, or maybe table of something. So you need to put all of this, and you might really write also the dates of the attachment. So this is it so far for the structure, but the format, again, it shouldn't be, as you will see here later on, is usually 1 page or 2 maximum, single space, left justified. So be careful not to make a double space, because what you see in front of you, that here it's maybe 1.5 or double, it's 1.5 line, you should write it single. So because if you write it in double space or 1.5 line spacing, you're gonna get more definitely than 1 page. So this is why people used to have it in a single space. So as I mentioned, you can add headings for each segment from the above format to make it more interesting. If you find out the paragraph is too much and it's better to write it in bullets and the list, why not to do that? And here it's a very nice recommendation to tell you what exactly each segment occupies in the memo. So this is 1/8 of the memo, it's the header, and the attachment could also be, see, it's a closing segment and attachment, they are part of the memo. It's 1/8. So 1/8, 1/8, it's almost 25 or 1/4. So the opening and context and task, the 3 segments together, they are 1/4 of the memo. And then the half of the memo is the summary if needed, but the most important is the discussion. This is the why segment, while this is actually the to whom, and actually this is the what. Okay, so this is very important. It was very quick. Also in this document you will find a nice sample. I would recommend to go through the sample easily and clearly in order to understand how it worked. So this is again one memo. So this is a memo that comes with, as an example, with this document, but I also want to show you that probably as a student at Algoma, you might have gotten a communication memo from the registrar or from the student community in different campus. So here it's a Brampton campus. This is how they write memos. So you can see easily the same thing, the to, the from, the date, and the memo subject in this case. So and then they go ahead and very clearly and very effective. Please note that between this and that, 12 and 14, so today is 12 anyways, the A304 computer lab will be closed. So it's very clear, without any introduction, as you can see, without anything. It's very effective, very simple, and this exactly you as a student want to find out. You don't want any introduction, and you don't know what this memo is about. So that's very interesting example. And then later on, why, what happened here. So, and even more information and more details if you want to communicate to the people. This is another here one. It's about the well-being issues here as well. It's another example. Let me see, this is another example here. Yeah, that's one example. Also to student, probably you got that before, because this was yeah, a couple of days ago, so probably you got the same thing from the same people. So it's a limit on off-campus work hours for international students. Maybe you will be happy to read this as well as an example. So starting 15th next month, 15th of November, in 2022, if you listen to it or watch this video at the same time. So this is for all students, staff, faculty, to make us aware. So this is the memo, to and from and the date, the usual heading segment. Uh, and immediately, what happened? Oh, what happened here? The memo was very attractive, but what happened here? Today, the government of Canada announced a temporary lift to the current 20-hour a week limit for full-time international students working off campus. So that is a good news for every student, and it's the first message. That is the very now you know the purpose, and then some details. What happened? Who said that? Give me more details, and more details comes after. So I hope you understand by doing this. And this is another memo for well-being. Maybe it was announced again 1 year ago, actually. But if you were there at the same time, then you got the same memo anyways. So again, go back to every memo you got from the university. You will find yeah, how to write a memo. So I think I hope I managed to give you some guidelines for how to make your memo more effective and to get a really high grade. Thank you very much.